The telegram trembled in Hannah Vance's hands as the first autumn wind swept through Galesburg, Illinois, carrying with it not just fallen leaves but the shattered pieces of her life. Not returning stop cannot waste more years on Barren wife stop divorce papers to follow stop William. 3 years of marriage ended in 16 cold words. Hannah sank to her knees on the wooden porch of the home she and William had built together, the home that now felt as empty as her womb. She was 25 and, according to her husband, worthless, Mrs. Vance. The telegrapher, young Jimmy Porter, shifted uncomfortably at the gate. "I'm awful sorry. Do you need me to fetch someone?" Hannah crumpled the telegram in her fist, pride straightening her spine even as tears threatened. "No, thank you, Jimmy. I'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. Not when the whispers started at church the following Sunday. Not when Mrs. Henderson from the general store asked with false sympathy if she'd heard from poor William after his terrible ordeal in Denver. Not when she learned her husband had written ahead to half the town about her condition before informing her he wouldn't return. By October of 1885, Hannah had sold most of their furniture. The money from William's mining venture in Colorado had stopped coming, and the small garden behind their house could only provide so much. She'd taken in mending, baked pies for the hotel restaurant, and still the debt collectors came knocking. "You could write to your parents in Boston," suggested Eliza Murphy, the only friend who hadn't abandoned her. They sat at Hannah's kitchen table, a pot of weak tea between them, and tell them what? That the marriage they opposed was indeed the mistake they predicted. Hannah shook her head. "I'd rather starve," Eliza sighed. "Pride won't feed you through winter, Hannah." That night, Hannah cried herself to sleep for the last time. In the morning, she marched to the bank where Mr. Perkins, the manager, reluctantly agreed to buy her house for half what it was worth. "It's the best I can do for a woman in your situation," he said, not meeting her eyes. Hannah bit back her retort. The money would get her somewhere new, somewhere people didn't know her as the barren woman abandoned by her husband. 3 days later, Hannah stepped off the train in Prairie Wind, Wyoming territory, her worldly possessions in one trunk and a small carpet bag. The town sprawled before her, rougher and rougher than Galesburg, buildings thrown up hastily to service the railroad and the nearby ranches. Wind whipped her skirts as she made her way to the only boarding house, a 2-story structure with peeling white paint. Mrs. Hollister, a stern-faced widow with iron-gray hair, looked Hannah up and down with suspicious eyes. "I don't rent to women of questionable virtue." Hannah met her gaze steadily. "I assure you my virtue isn't in question. I'm looking for honest work and a fresh start." After a moment, Mrs. Hollister nodded. $2 a week includes breakfast. I'll need references by the end of the month." "I'll have them," Hannah lied. Finding work proved harder than Hannah anticipated. The general store didn't need help, the schoolteacher position was filled, and the saloon. Well, they offered work, but not the kind Hannah would consider. On her 4th day, desperate and with her funds dwindling, Hannah noticed a handwritten sign in the window of the Prairie Wind Gazette. "Assistant needed, inquire within." The newspaper office was little more than a large room with a printing press, stacks of paper, and a perpetually harried-looking man with ink-stained fingers. "I don't need a woman to serve coffee and tidy up," he said without looking up from his typesetting. "I need someone who can write, set type, and work until the job's done." "I can write," Hannah said firmly. "I kept the books for my husband's business. I've read every novel in the Galesburg library, and I'm not afraid of long hours." The editor, Herbert Tucker, finally looked up, skepticism plain on his face. "Can you spell entrepreneurial?" "entrepreneurial," Hannah replied without hesitation. Tucker's eyebrows rose slightly. "And why's a well-educated woman like you in Prairie Wind?" "Fresh start," she said simply. He studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. $3 a week to start. Be here tomorrow at 6. For the first time since receiving William's telegram, Hannah felt a flicker of hope. The work was hard but engrossing. Hannah learned to set type, to write concise stories about town council meetings and livestock prices, to operate the temperamental printing press. Her fingers were perpetually stained with ink, but her mind was occupied, and the gnawing pain in her heart subsided, at least during working hours. She'd been in Prairie Wind for nearly a month when the door to the Gazette office banged open, bringing with it a gust of November wind, and a man Hannah had seen around town but never spoken to. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer sky, Wade Vincent removed his hat as he entered, revealing dark hair with hints of silver at the temples. Hannah guessed him to be in his mid-30s, though life in the West aged a person quickly. "Tucker," he greeted, nodding to the editor. "Got that notice ready? Just finished setting the type," Tucker replied, gesturing to Hannah. "Mrs. Vance here did the work. She's my new assistant." Wade's gaze shifted to Hannah, a hint of surprise crossing his features before he offered a polite nod. "Madam." "Mr. Vincent," she acknowledged, having heard his name around town. He owned one of the largest cattle ranches in the territory, the Double V, Mrs. "Vance is from back east," Tucker continued. "Civilizing our little paper." Wade's mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. "That's so. Well, civilization could use a stronghold out here." He turned his attention back to Tucker. "When will it run?" "Tomorrow's edition." "First page, just as you requested." Hannah's curiosity got the better of her. "Are you looking for something in particular, Mr. Vincent?" "Someone," he corrected. "Good ranch hand. Last one lit out for the gold fields in Montana, left me short-handed for winter preparations." "I wish you luck in your search," Hannah said, returning to her typesetting. Wade lingered a moment longer than necessary before replacing his hat. "Obliged, madam." The next day, a fierce snowstorm hit Prairie Wind, catching the town off guard with its early intensity. Hannah struggled through drifts to reach the newspaper office, arriving to find Tucker hadn't made it in. She worked alone, finalizing the edition with Wade's advertisement prominently displayed. As she was preparing to run the press, the door burst open again, admitting a snow-covered Wade Vincent. "Tucker around?" he asked, stamping snow from his boots. "Snowed in, I expect, but the paper's ready to print. Your notice is set." Wade nodded but didn't leave. Instead, he studied her with unexpected intensity. "You live at Hollister's place, don't you?" Hannah nodded, surprised he knew. "Roads impassable that way, storms getting worse." As if to confirm his words, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Hannah felt a flutter of anxiety. "Surely it will pass soon," Wade shook his head. "Not before nightfall. You'd best come to the hotel. It's closer and they've got a good fire going." "I need to print the papers first," Hannah said, gesturing to the press. "I'll wait," Wade offered, settling into Tucker's chair without invitation. True to his word, Wade waited as Hannah operated the press, printing the 50 copies needed for the small town. When finished, she looked up to find him watching her with something like admiration. "You handle that machine like you were born to it," he commented. Hannah felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Hardly, I've only been at it a month." "Quick learner," Wade observed, rising to his feet. "Time to go, storm's not getting any better." Outside, the snow had indeed intensified, the wind driving icy particles that stung Hannah's exposed skin. Wade surprised her by offering his arm, and even more by draping his heavy coat around her shoulders when she shivered. "Can't have Tucker's assistant freezing to death," he said gruffly. "Who'd print my cattle sale notices?" Despite the storm's ferocity, Hannah found herself smiling at his dry humor. The hotel lobby was crowded with townsfolk caught by the blizzard. Mrs. Peters, the proprietor's wife, clucked her tongue at Hannah's snow-covered state. "You poor dear, come by the fire." "Walter, fetch some coffee for Mrs. Vance and Mr. Vincent." Hannah settled gratefully by the hearth, Wade taking the chair beside her. Around them, conversations buzzed, punctuated by laughter and the occasional raised voice from a card game in the corner. "How long have you been in Wyoming territory, Mrs. Vance?" Wade asked after they'd warmed their hands around coffee cups. "Just over a month," Hannah replied, "and before that, Illinois, Galesburg." She didn't elaborate. Wade seemed to sense her reluctance. "I've been here 15 years. Came out with nothing but a horse and my daddy's old saddle, built the Double V from scratch." "That's impressive," Hannah said sincerely. "Lot of work. Worth it, though." He gazed into the fire. Man needs something that's his own out here. Or a woman, Hannah found herself saying. Wade's eyes crinkled at the corners. Indeed. The blizzard continued through the night. Mrs. Peters found rooms for everyone, though Hannah had to share with the milliner and her daughter. When morning came, the snow had stopped, though drifts reached the windows in places. Hannah was surprised to find Wade in the dining room, drinking coffee. "I thought you'd have headed back to your ranch," she said, joining him at his invitation. "Roads still need clearing. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "wanted to make sure my ad got proper attention in today's paper." Hannah found herself smiling back. Front page, as promised. Over the next few weeks, Wade Vincent became a regular visitor to the Gazette office. Sometimes he brought advertisements for cattle sales or equipment he needed. Other times he simply stopped by, offering no excuse beyond checking if Tucker had received any applications from potential ranch hands. Tucker noticed. "Vincent's never showed this much interest in newspaper operations before," he commented one afternoon after Wade had left. "Reckon it's not the printing press he's coming to see." Hannah busied herself with the mail, hoping her blush wasn't visible. "Mr. Vincent is simply being neighborly," Tucker snorted. "Wade Vincent's been many things in this territory, but neighborly ain't one of them. Man keeps to himself except for business." "Perhaps he's changing," Hannah suggested. "Perhaps he is," Tucker agreed meaningfully. December brought preparations for Christmas throughout Prairie Wind. Hannah found herself assigned to cover the town's festivities for the Gazette, which meant attending the church bazaar, the school pageant, and the town hall dance. It was at the bazaar that Hannah ran into Eliza Murphy, her friend from Galesburg. "Hannah," Eliza exclaimed, embracing her warmly. "I couldn't believe it when my cousin said you were here. Why didn't you write?" "Eliza, what on earth are you doing in Wyoming?" Hannah asked, genuinely shocked. "My cousin Martha married the station master. I'm visiting for the holidays." Eliza lowered her voice. "But what about you?" "You simply vanished." Hannah guided her friend to a quiet corner. "I needed a fresh start away from the gossip." "Well, you certainly found it," Eliza said, looking around, "though I hear you've caught the attention of the most eligible rancher in the territory." Hannah felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Vincent is merely a regular advertiser in our paper." "And I'm the Queen of England," Eliza teased. "He's been watching you since we sat down." Despite herself, Hannah glanced across the church hall. Sure enough, Wade stood with a group of ranchers, his gaze immediately finding hers. He nodded slightly, the corners of his mouth lifting. "See," Eliza said triumphantly, "the man can't take his eyes off you." "It's not like that," Hannah insisted. "Besides, he doesn't know about William." Eliza's expression softened. "Perhaps you should tell him." "Tell a man I've barely spoken to that my husband abandoned me because I couldn't give him children? I think not." But fate had other plans. That very evening, as Hannah was leaving the bazaar, she overheard two women talking just outside the church. From Galesburg. "My sister wrote me all about it. Husband left her cold when she couldn't have babies after 3 years of trying, called her barren in front of half the town before heading to Colorado. No, poor thing, does Vincent know? Doubt it. Man like that wants sons to inherit his ranch. He won't waste time once he finds out." Hannah stood frozen, her heart pounding. When she finally forced herself to move, she nearly collided with a solid figure in the darkness. "Mrs. Vance," Wade's voice was quiet, horror washed over her. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." His face was unreadable in the shadows. "May I walk you home?" "I don't need your pity," Hannah said stiffly. "Not offering any," Wade replied. "Just a walk on a cold night." After a moment's hesitation, Hannah nodded. They walked in silence through the snow-covered streets, the cold air stinging Hannah's cheeks, or perhaps it was shame that burned there. "My wife died in childbirth," Wade said suddenly when they were halfway to the boarding house. 8 years ago, her and the baby both. Hannah looked up at him, startled by the personal revelation. "After that, I threw myself into building the ranch, figured I'd lost my chance at family." He paused. "Folks out here put a lot of stock in having children, carrying on legacies, having extra hands for the work." "Is that what you believe?" Hannah asked quietly. Wade was silent for several steps before answering. "Used to, now I'm not so sure." They reached Mrs. Hollister's gate. Hannah turned to face him, gathering her courage. My husband left me because I couldn't give him children. He called me barren, worthless. That's why I came west. Wade's expression hardened. Man like that doesn't deserve the title of husband. Nevertheless, it's the truth. I can't have children, Mr. Vincent. Any man considering my companionship should know that. Wade, he corrected softly. And I've found, Mrs. Vance, that children aren't what make a home. Hannah blinked back unexpected tears. What does then? His eyes held her steadily. Trust, respect, working together toward something that matters. The rest is just details. Before Hannah could respond, Mrs. Hollister opened the front door, spilling light onto the snowy path. Mrs. Vance, is that you out there in the cold? Good night, Mrs. Vance, Wade said, tipping his hat before turning away. Hannah, she called after him. My name is Hannah. He looked back, a smile warming his features. Good night, Hannah. The town dance, held the weekend before Christmas, became the talk of Prairie Wind when Wade Vincent asked Hannah Vance to accompany him. Mrs. Hollister nearly fainted at the news, and Tucker merely grinned knowingly when Hannah requested the evening off. Been wondering when he'd get around to asking proper, the editor commented. Man's been sweet on you since that first snowstorm. Hannah wore her best dress, a deep blue wool that brought out the amber flecks in her brown eyes. Wade arrived promptly at 7, looking uncomfortable but handsome in a pressed shirt and string tie. You look beautiful, he said simply when she opened the door. Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Vincent. Thought we were past formalities, he said, offering his arm. Wade, she corrected, smiling. The town hall had been transformed with pine boughs and red ribbons. A small band played in the corner, and a punch bowl sat guarded by the minister's wife, who was known to check regularly for spirits being added. Hannah was acutely aware of the stares and whispers as she and Wade entered. It seemed the entire town had taken notice of the rancher's interest in the newspaper assistant. Ignore them, Wade murmured, guiding her toward the dance floor. People will always talk. I'm rather accustomed to being talked about, Hannah replied dryly. Wade's hand settled at her waist as they joined the waltz. Then let's give them something worth gossiping about. He proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, leading her confidently through the steps. Hannah found herself relaxing, even enjoying the attention as the evening progressed. During a break in the music, Wade brought her punch and led her to a relatively quiet corner. Enjoying yourself, he asked. Very much, Hannah admitted, though I suspect my feet will protest tomorrow. Worth it, I hope. Definitely worth it. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. Wade's expression grew serious. Hannah, there's something I should. He was interrupted by Eliza, who appeared breathlessly at Hannah's side. Hannah, I've been looking everywhere for you. I just received the most alarming telegram from Galesburg. Hannah's stomach dropped. What is it? Is someone ill? Eliza glanced uncertainly at Wade before continuing. It's William. He's here in Prairie Wind, arrived on the afternoon train, asking all over town for you. The color drained from Hannah's face. William, here? Why would he looking for your wife, Vincent? The voice cut through the music and conversation like a knife. The crowd parted to reveal a tall, thin man with a neatly trimmed beard and expensive clothes. William Vance stood in the doorway, his expression cold as he surveyed the room before focusing on Hannah. There you are, my dear. How convenient to find you already in the company of your next prospect. William's voice carried the refined accent of his Boston upbringing, now tinged with contempt. Wade stepped slightly in front of Hannah, his posture tense. You must be the husband who abandoned his wife. William's smile didn't reach his eyes. Temporarily absent would be more accurate. I've come to reclaim what's mine. I'm not yours anymore, William, Hannah said, finding her voice despite the shock. You made that abundantly clear in your telegram. A hasty decision, regretted almost immediately. William stepped closer. Come, Hannah, we'll discuss this privately. No. The word came out stronger than she expected. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. William's facade of civility slipped. Very well. My business venture in Colorado has proven extraordinarily profitable. I find myself in need of a proper hostess for my new position in Denver society. You are still legally my wife. The wife you called barren and worthless, Hannah challenged, acutely aware of the watching crowd, a moment of frustration, nothing more. William waved his hand dismissively. These things happen in marriages. Surely you haven't been holding a grudge over a few harsh words. Wade's hand found Hannah's, squeezing gently. Seems to me a man who'd throw away his wife once would do it again when convenient. William's eyes narrowed. This doesn't concern you, rancher. I believe it does, Wade replied evenly. Hannah belongs in civilization, not this frontier backwater, William said, his gaze sweeping contemptuously around the room, with people of breeding and education. Hannah felt anger rise within her. People of breeding. Like those who gossiped about my condition, who crossed the street to avoid speaking to me after you spread rumors throughout Galesburg. You're being dramatic, William sighed. I've come a long way to bring you home. This is my home now, Hannah said firmly. I have work that matters, friends who value me, and, she glanced at Wade, and possibilities I never imagined in Galesburg. William's face hardened. I see. Well, if you prefer sagebrush and cattle to proper society, perhaps you deserve this primitive existence. He turned to Wade. Enjoy my leavings, Mr. Vincent. Just don't expect her to provide you with heirs. Wade moved so quickly that William had no time to react. In one fluid motion, the rancher had William by his expensive lapels, lifting him slightly off the floor. Apologize to the lady, Wade said, his voice dangerously soft. William's face reddened. Take your hands off me, you uncouth, wrong answer. Wade's grip tightened. Wade, don't. Hannah placed her hand on his arm. He's not worth it. After a tense moment, Wade released William, who staggered back, straightening his rumpled clothing. You'll regret this, Hannah, William said, his voice shaking with anger. Both of you will. The only thing I regret, Hannah replied calmly, is not leaving you sooner. William stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The town hall erupted in excited whispers. Hannah suddenly felt every eye upon her, the familiar sensation of being the center of unwanted attention washing over her. I need some air, she murmured to Wade. He nodded, guiding her through the crowd to a side door that opened onto a small porch. The December night was crisp and clear, stars brilliant against the black Wyoming sky. I'm sorry, Wade said quietly when they were alone. I shouldn't have manhandled him like that. I'm surprised you didn't do worse, Hannah admitted. And a small, uncharitable part of me wishes you had. A smile tugged at the corner of Wade's mouth. That offer remains open. Despite everything, Hannah laughed. I appreciate your restraint. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. He can't force you to go back with him, Wade finally said. Not in this territory, I know, but he could make things difficult. Legal proceedings, scandal. Hannah shivered, not entirely from the cold. William has always been vindictive when crossed. Wade removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Hannah, there's something I need to tell you, something I've been trying to say all evening. Her heart skipped a beat at his serious tone. What is it? I'm leaving Prairie Wind. Temporarily, he added quickly, seeing her expression. There's a herd of prime breeding stock coming up from Texas. I need to go inspect them before purchase, make arrangements for transport. I see, Hannah said, trying to hide her disappointment. When do you leave? Tomorrow. Should be gone about 3 weeks. Wade took her hands in his. I'd planned to ask you to consider something while I'm away. Consider what? Coming to the Double V as my wife. Hannah stared at him, certain she'd misheard. Your wife. Wade, we've barely known each other 2 months. Long enough for me to know what I want, he said simply. Long enough to recognize a woman of strength, intelligence, and character when I see one. But you know I can't have children. Your ranch is just land and cattle without someone to share it with. Wade's eyes held hers. I told you before, children aren't what make a home, it's the people in it that matter. Hannah felt tears gathering. William said, William is a fool who threw away the best thing in his life. Wade's thumbs gently wiped away a tear that had escaped. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Take the 3 weeks. Think about it. If the answer's no, I'll understand. Hannah looked up at this man who had entered her life so unexpectedly, who saw value in her when others saw only deficiency. And if the answer is yes, Wade's smile transformed his face. Then we'll build something worth having, you and I, together." Impulsively, Hannah rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. After a moment of surprise, Wade responded, gathering her close as the kiss deepened. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I'll take that as encouraging," he murmured. William departed on the morning train, his threats of legal action mysteriously abandoned after a private conversation with Sheriff Mills. Wade left the same day, heading south with promises to return by mid-January. The weeks of his absence gave Hannah time to consider his proposal. She spoke with Eliza, who was delighted by the romantic turn of events. She talked with Tucker, who gruffly acknowledged he'd miss her at the paper but thought she'd make a fine rancher's wife. Most surprising was Mrs. Hollister, who invited Hannah to tea one afternoon. "Vincent's a good man," the landlady said, pouring from a china teapot Hannah had never seen before. "Keeps his word, pays his debts, treats his hands fair. You know him well?" Hannah asked. "Known him since he first came to the territory, nothing but determination and big dreams." Mrs. Hollister stirred her tea thoughtfully. "Lost his Sarah and the baby hard. Didn't think he'd ever look at another woman." "I can't give him children," Hannah said quietly. Mrs. Hollister's eyes were kind. "Some houses are filled with children's laughter, others with different kinds of joy. Both can be homes." By the time Wade returned in mid-January, Hannah had made her decision. She met his stagecoach in town, her heart racing as he stepped down, looking trail-worn but breaking into a smile when he spotted her. "Hannah," he said, crossing to her immediately. "I didn't expect." "That is, I hoped, but yes," she interrupted. "My answer is yes." Wade's exhaustion seemed to vanish. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll come to the Double V. Yes to all of it." He lifted her off her feet in an embrace that drew cheers from the onlookers at the stage depot. "When?" he asked when he set her down. "As soon as you like. I've given notice at the Gazette and the boarding house." "Tomorrow," Wade decided. "No, today, right now," Hannah laughed. "At least let me pack my things." They were married the following Sunday in the Prairie Wind church, with Tucker giving the bride away and Eliza serving as maid of honor. The entire town turned out, the same people who had once whispered about Hannah now throwing rice and offering congratulations. The Double V Ranch proved to be larger and more prosperous than Hannah had imagined, with a surprisingly comfortable main house that Wade had built with his own hands. The foreman and ranch hands welcomed her with shy respect, clearly devoted to their boss and curious about the woman who had captured his heart. Spring brought calving season and endless work. Hannah learned to ride properly, to help with the accounts, to manage the household staff that Wade hadn't bothered to tell her about. She planted a vegetable garden and flower beds, ordered books for a proper library, and started a ranch journal that became the foundation for occasional articles she still contributed to the Gazette. By their first anniversary, Hannah couldn't imagine any life but this one. She and Wade had settled into a partnership that went beyond marriage. They were truly building something together, just as he had promised. It was a crisp October evening, much like the one when she'd first received William's telegram, when Hannah found Wade on the porch, staring out at the sunset painting the range in shades of gold and crimson. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, joining him. Wade pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Worth more than that. I was just thinking how right I was that night at the dance. About what? About what makes a home." His hand caressed her back gently. "A year ago, this was just a ranch. Now it's where I want to be every day because you're here." Hannah leaned into his embrace. "I never thought I'd find this kind of happiness again. After William, I believed that part of my life was over." "William was an idiot," Wade said, a statement he'd made many times over the past year. "Yes, but an instructive one." Hannah smiled up at him. "He taught me what I didn't want, which made it easier to recognize what I did want when it came along." Wade's expression grew serious. "Do you ever regret about children?" Hannah considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like, but then I think of everything we have: the ranch, our work, each other, our home." "We could still adopt someday," Wade suggested. "Plenty of children need homes in this territory." The idea warmed Hannah's heart. Would you want that with you? Yes. Wade's arms tightened around her. But even if it's just us, Hannah Vincent, that's more than enough for me. As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one above their home, a home built not from expectations or obligations, but from choice and love and the courage to begin again.